That's Nick.
And that's Joseph. And today we're here to talk about New Life, the directorial debut of John Rosman, which premiered at the 2023 Fantasia International Film Festival. It is being released courtesy of XYZ Films on May 3rd, 2024.
Directorial debut. What is this movie about? A mysterious woman on the run and the resourceful fixer assigned to bring her in. Their two unique stories inextricably link as the stakes of the pursuit rise to apocalyptic proportions. That's a little convoluted, but...
Inextricably.
What's your pull quote?
Surprisingly compassionate and ultimately compelling, this ironically titled debut might just get under the skin of those who may be immune to the usual methods of pandemic panic.
Mine. New Life is an impressive, if not frustrating, directorial debut. I thought this movie was very good.
Yes, I recommend going in completely blind, actually, if you're planning on watching it.
I agree, but then I just watched the trailer, and the trailer basically, I mean, you could read between the lines and see what's happening. Because at first it's like, I didn't watch the trailer before, so I was not clear why this woman's on the run and why someone's looking for her. But when you watch the trailer, it's clearly like there's some sort of biohazard component to it.
Sure, and I did not watch the trailer. The title and the poster were giving me Claire Denis' High Life a little bit, but I think the poster with the main character, it looks like the main character Jessica in the hazmat suit is misleading, really.
Yeah, but the narrative is sort of told out of sequence, which really adds to the tension of the story, and I think it's quite effective. I'm just going to tell it straight up. So Jessica's this young woman played by
Hayley Erin.
And we see that she's out camping with her man, and they, like a dog approaches them. And she is really into playing with this dog, but the husband's leery, or the guy. And then we see that very quickly he develops a rash. And when he gets home, he's like, I mean, the rash has worsened significantly. So Jessica calls 911, and when the paramedics show up, they take her and take her to like a warehouse and put her in like a jail cell. She's freaked out. She ends up killing a guard and then going on the run. So effectively, she's on the run thinking she murdered someone.
And they're in the Pacific Northwest, and she's trying to head towards the Canadian border.
But we have this other character, Elsa, played by
Sonya Walger.
And she's a fixer, I suppose. She's contracted by a pharmaceutical company who was working on some virus, and like this dog was infected with the virus, and the dog got loose. And so this dog has infected Jessica and her man with this distinct strain of Ebola.
That's what they're saying?
That's what they're saying,
Yeah.
But it looks like a flesh-eating virus that's almost like Walking Dead level zombie virus. But they, so while Jessica's on the run, Elsa is looking for her. And what's Elsa's backstory? She's been diagnosed with ALS, and we see that she's deteriorating quite quickly. Like, she's not able to walk without a cane, and she has some stability issues. But ultimately, Jessica and Elsa meet because Elsa's looking for her and explains to her what's going on. That you're infected with this very deadly virus, and we need to bring you in so we can test your blood and see why you were not symptomatic for so long. Because by the time Elsa finally does catch up to Jessica, she is showing symptoms. Like her hair is falling out and she has sores on her face.
Pustules.
So Elsa basically tells her, like, you're coming with me dead or alive. And it's in the trailer that Jessica makes a break for it. And of course, Elsa kills her. And then we flash forward a bit, and we had seen throughout that Elsa seems like maybe she wants to give up on life because of her ALS diagnosis. But maybe after this incident, she's decided to try to push forward. So we see her with some man who maybe is there to help redesign her home to accommodate a wheelchair.
She spoke with him earlier.
Like a support group type person?
Where he was allowing her to interview that other woman he cared for with ALS.
Oh, sure.
So he was like a nurse or some kind of social aid worker.
So I guess all's well that ends well, because we stopped this virus from spreading further than it did, because we do see that a few people are infected and die because of Jessica. But then we also see that Elsa is going to try to live her best life.
Mm-hmm. And the very final scene is this man that is visiting her talking about redesigning her home because there's too many stairs, starts coughing like a coughing jag, and yeah, and I think that's where the irony of the title comes together quite nicely, because what is new? The new life is she's got to give up her old way of living, being able to perambulate and all, but he's still like, there's a lot of good life left to live, and it's like, well, is there? I mean, that's for everyone to question themselves.
The story itself's pretty simple, but I think the strength of the film are the performances from everyone, really. They all do a fine job, but
Yeah.
I think the organization of the story lends itself to being thrilling to a degree.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it, it's classified as a horror thriller, but I'd say this is more on the dramatic side. But for a debut, and especially for a genre film, it does some things with supporting characters that a lot of major Hollywood studio films with all the bells and whistles can't quite get right. And that is formulating some... It doesn't take much to formulate some empathy and care for a character, and that makes their demise that much more memorable, or you have the reaction you're supposed to.
Well, I want to talk about that, but first I should say the film opens with Jessica like running in the streets covered in blood. But based on the timeline, that's right after she kills the ambulance driver, like the guard who was holding her captive in the warehouse. So then we get a lot of then the remainder of the story is sort of her trying to be on the run. And then we get flashbacks to how she became infected. But I want to talk about the supporting characters because she's like pilfering food from a shed. Mm-hmm. And the owner of the home, this old man, approaches her with a shotgun. But he sees that she's,
a woman in trouble.
A woman in trouble. She has a black eye. So he seems sympathetic towards her and says, you know what, why don't you come inside? My wife's made dinner. Breakfast, I'm sorry. And they're very kind to her, and they give her clothes and tell her, you can stay if you want to, but she insists on being like dropped off somewhere. But then we see that those characters end up becoming infected and ultimately killed by Elsa. Mm-hmm. So very good work in like making me feel bad for those people. Mm-hmm. Then Jessica ends up at a bar, and the proprietor or the manager of the barkeep, this woman, Jessica's asking her, like, do you need anyone to work around here? Because I need some money. And the lady's very kind to her, almost too kind.
Well, she sees that she's beat up. See, that there's this triangulation of like women seeing other women and kind of empathizing with them. Like, I'm having a similar problem, so I'm having a hard time turning you away.
Yeah, because the barkeep is like, oh, I can see you're wearing a wedding ring and you have a black eye. Like, your man must whoop your ass. I know all about that, so I'm going to help you. You can stay at my house. And then, of course, the next morning, when Jessica wakes up and asks the lady, whose name I think is Molly.
Mm-hmm.
She goes, hey girl, I'm going to the store. You want anything? We can see that Molly's in her bedroom dying.
Yeah.
So of course you feel bad for her. I think the weakest part of the story to me is Jessica, because
well,
I had a hard time sympathizing with her.
Well, one, she doesn't know what's really going on, and they didn't communicate with her properly to tell her she was the carrier of this deadly disease.
No, but so then basically she's on the run. Like, she's gone on the run because she thinks she murdered someone. So that's not cool.
And she did, but to her self-defense.
Sure.
But I like that there's the switch of we're so coded to, empathize with whatever this mysterious plight she's going through, to realize like, oh, she's the problem.
But then to get to the ending, I do think this movie is very good, but I wish that at the end, when the two women meet finally and a decision has to be made, mm-hmm. like you're either coming dead or alive, I think I wanted to feel more emotional when we see Jessica, who's clearly not going to live even if she doesn't get shot, because she's like worse for wear. When she finally does get shot and killed, I kind of, my feeling was like, good riddance. Like, this lady is spreading this virus and is kind of selfish. Like, she's still trying to make a break for it because she's saying she wants to travel the world or see the world.
She's saying it's unfair that this has happened because all she did was want to see the world. And Elsa Gray says, well, me too.
Which I thought that moment was powerful, but I still wished I would have felt more for Jessica.
Still, she's put in the same position that Elsa is able to see herself in, is contemplating suicide, really. Like, nothing's going to get better. It's only going to devolve, in the case of Jessica, at a much more accelerated rate than ALS. But that's her death wish, is you have to kill me. It's really suicide because there's no other way. she doesn't want to be held and kept to die. So I don't know. I think that it works really well. And we were discussing as it was going on about how, the fact that Elsa Grey has ALS, it's so maybe on the nose, but I think it heightens the stakes really well. And I really like the presence of this Sonya Walger, who I've not seen before in a film, who's giving me, like, if you mix Linda Hamilton and Julianne Nicholson vibes.
Elsa.
But, yes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I liked her, and she looked familiar to me, but I know I haven't seen her.
And then once Jessica starts to deteriorate, she was giving me the Taking of Deborah Logan.
I wrote that down, actually. Yeah.
Or Samantha Morton as a precog in Minority Report.
She looked like hell, which was kind of funny because up till that point, as far as Elsa knew, Jessica wasn't showing any symptoms. So when she approaches Jessica, she sees the back, and you can see that she's bald-headed at this point. And Elsa's telling Jessica, like, oh, you're asymptomatic, so we just want to figure out, what's going on. And Jessica tells her, I think I might be a little sick, Elsa.
She kind of whispers it like, oh.
I thought that was funny.
You know that moment when you're denying to yourself that I have a cold, and then you're like, oh.
Nope.
Yep,
nope.
I have it.
I'm just going to go through my notes. They paid for a Bob Dylan song.
And
they played it more than once.
That's actually my favorite Bobby D song, Like a Rolling Stone. But that comes to take on kind of weird meanings as well and plays over the end credits. So I'm glad they paid for it and got their money's worth.
Knowing when we first see Jessica eating, like when we see her eating once, I wasn't sure what that food was, but then when the old couple feed her, she's eating like an animal.
She is.
Do you think that was a symptom of the virus?
No, I don't know what that was.
I hope that's not how she normally eats. She can't have been that hungry. She hasn't been. It's only been like a day or two.
Well, as I was thinking, she's this thin white girl who maybe is a vegan, and that was their only way to get through eating eggs and bacon.
Oh. When Jessica gets to the bar and sees Molly and is asking her for a job, and Molly's like, girl, we're not hiring, but, how about a drink? And so she pours some whiskey, and they both take a shot, and they toast to a new life. But then we see Molly drinks quite a bit of brown liquor, so much so that when they're ready to go home that night,
she's like, I can't drive.
She's like, I can't drive. Like, damn.
Yeah, there were some nice little character ticks in instances that you wouldn't expect.
I think considering this was probably not the biggest budget, I thought that the sort of like HQ, this man, because there's like this guy who's kind of like Elsa's boss.
That, like, her handler.
Yeah, and then there's like a tech guy.
Because he's the one feeding her information about, because she's a contractor, a fixer, so she's like, who am I really working for? And I kind of like how they try to break up giving us that exposition, because we get transmissions of their conversation in text.
Yeah, I was going to say, I thought it was well done considering that they probably didn't have access to a lot. That, I thought it was effective. And then we keep hearing them say, like, you can't let her cross the border. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, before you realize that it's because she's infected, it's like, God, what did she do?
That man, her handler, Tony Amendola is the actor's name. He was reminding me of F. Murray Abraham.
Yeah. Well, the texture of his skin. Maybe.
Well, his whole appearance, not just that.
So probably I agree, this is more of a drama than like a horror film. Probably the only part that was creepy and was giving me like 28 Days Later vibes is when Elsa goes to the house of the old couple who helped her, and they are full-on zombie. And they attack Elsa. She has to shoot them both in the head. That was the only moment that was kind of like, oh. Well,
and that's the moment where she's saying, Janie, the wife, had called that's how they're able to kind of track Jessica by who she's infecting, because those people call the hospital. She's the one that says the word Ebola. And then I think that's where the film takes on another kind of tonal shift. And of course, if you've ever read The Hot Zone, what year was that published? Like 96. I remember reading that in elementary school, being terrified of Ebola Zaire.
I read that book on a cruise ship.
Yep.
That was not a good place to read that book.
Where you're trapped with a bunch of people doing all kinds of things. Yeah.
The ending, while it's sad to see that Elsa's finally having to, handle Jessica, and it's, bring her in dead or alive. But when Jessica makes a break for it, I thought it was funny because you have this woman with a cane trying to chase this zombie bitch who's trying to run for the border. That visual was funny.
Well, that's where it's close to agonizing, because she has a cane, and then she's also shaky because of the ALS. But you can hear in her voice, she's like, when I shoot, I don't miss. and it's like, oh, this woman, this is a tough woman, a tough, well-trained woman, and to, you know, when you take pride in those kind of things yourself and you start to deteriorate, I don't know, like, that's gotta be hard.
And that moment is the second time Elsa confronted Jessica. The first time Elsa confronted Jessica, she saw her like standing in front of a general store, and this is before Jessica started to get sick. Elsa chased her, but because she's, you know, like her mobility's not the best, she falls, and so Jessica's able to run and get away.
And her handler Ray, when he finally kind of tells her what she's in for, she's like, "Ugh, I want to give up. Why did you hire me?" And he's like, "Well, you have ALS, and what are you just gonna let your limbs fall asleep one by one in front of the TV?" He's like, "You're the perfect person for this, a fixer with 6 months to live." And it's like, yeah,
I thought it worked.
it works.
Yeah, it does work. But yeah, I thought this was very good.
You kept commenting on her name, Elsa Gray, because they say it several times, and I was trying to think of other names. Because you kept thinking, I know that name.
Yeah, it sounds like a familiar character name.
Well, Jean Grey from the X-Men films.
Okay.
There's Effie Gray, an Emma Thompson, Dakota Fanning film. And then there's the Enola Gay.
And there's Elsa Pataki.
There's Elsa... Well, that's super random. There's also Enola Holmes. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. What would you give New Life?
3.5. I'm very much expecting to see something great from this filmmaker.
I thought it was very good. I would give it 3.5 out of 5. Join us on Patreon and listen to our podcast. Bye.